Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
It's 6:40 on Wednesday, August 25th. This is a meeting of the WNESU Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union Board, which is convening at Bellows Falls Union High School in the library. And Bellows Falls Union High School Board will come to order. Adjustments to the agenda. And I'm going to need some help here because I picked up some agendas from Nicole, but I think they're the first draft and not the second draft. So but when I'm working my way down through this, Chris, if you would please stop me. As if, for instance, I think I have a couple of missing letters under new business. And I was fishing in my email for Nicole's latest agenda, which I know I have.
I put it up on the screen for you.
6F and 6G. So when we get there, I would appreciate having a queue. Okay, adjustments, other adjustments. Okay, I would like to strike 5D, Coalition for Vermont Student Equity Update. We did have one from your chair Monday night at the high school, but I think it'd be far better to get the exec director in here for maybe 5 minutes. So I think might be able to do a more cogent explanation of what that's all about than I have. So that's off. Is there anything else that needs to go on or off? I'm not hearing it. And you're going to have to give me just a moment while I look for one more. I had it in my queue and it's disappeared from me. Oh, sorry. I had one more on my queue, which has disappeared, and I'm going to try to quickly recover it because it's the statement from the chair. I will. All right, I'm not finding it, so I'm going to have to paraphrase it. I'm sorry, I would like to read it verbatim. After the last supervisory union meeting, I made a statement that I believe that there was the possibility that there may have been ESSER expenditures which had not appeared on warrants. That was completely erroneous, and I sought advice from Flora, and Flora made it unequivocally clear that I had misspoken and that absolutely no ESSER funds have been expended which have not been through our statewide accounting system, which Flora is called e-finance. Thank you. And all those e-finance docs do appear on warrants and get signed off by the warrant signers for this board. So your chair was an error, and I want to make it clear that that was entirely my mistake. And I want to say it because we have an administration here that works extremely hard on our behalf. And even though sometimes I think the understanding ESSER is a little dense, and we'll be talking about how to make it more user-friendly when we meet the next time. But I made a big mistake. I want to own it, and I want to make it absolutely clear that administration has done everything that they're expected to do, and they have my unequivocal support, and that has been the case all along. Okay, it's my public comment. I think I might have one right over here. Excuse me, I just want to say Matt's asked us all to get as close to the microphone as we possibly can.
Am I live?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect. My name is Olivia Clark. I am the ELL teacher for WNESU, and I'm here tonight as a representative of the WNEA as the liaison to the Vermont NEA Healthcare Council. I do have notes in front of me, so I apologize if I'm not looking at you the whole time. Please forgive me. As you're likely aware, negotiations over state healthcare have started in April. These negotiations are made up of a 10-person commission from the Vermont School Board Association and the VTNEA, 5 from each. We believe, the NEA believes that it's critical to have open communication about these, about the healthcare bargaining to ensure that both teachers, support staff, members, and members of your administration all have equitable, affordable access to healthcare. After intensive negotiations at the end of June, we're now in fact finding with the state healthcare. If there isn't a settlement reached, then we'll go into arbitration in November, and then hopefully a decision in December. The Vermont School Board Association's team, which is made up of 2 members who are not elected school board members, have proposed significant increases to healthcare, including costs that are 4 times more out of pocket for teachers and 5 times more for support staff. We believe that these proposed increases would make healthcare significantly less affordable and less accessible for teachers and support staff in our school district, especially our lowest paid colleagues. 5 times more out-of-pocket costs, which is huge. Comprehensive, affordable, and accessible healthcare is one of our strongest recruitment tools to attract educators. And these increasing costs will just hamper our ability to retain staff. Everyone in the state is having problems retaining staff, and this will just make it harder. And this is why we really want to reach out to local school boards and open the lines of communication, because of how crucial this issue could become in just a few months. And we believe that the VSBA Board of Directors needs to hear from you, its constituents, about the impacts and proposals on our school district. We strongly encourage you to attend the regional VSBA meeting on September 29th to ask questions of your representatives and to hold them accountable. We really want to open this line of communication because I think that we should be on the same side on this one. We do not want out of reach healthcare for anyone in our community, especially if we're in a public health crisis as we are right now. Finally, the board and the association share an interest in achieving statewide healthcare reform because it is not only one way to begin to clamp down on annual double-digit increases in the cost of healthcare insurance, while the VSBA refuses to join the WNEA's call for systemic healthcare reform, educators and local school boards can make a difference by working together with these legislators. We call on you to support the newly formed Legislative Joint Healthcare Affordability Study Commission to explore creative policy options for improving healthcare affordability statewide. Because when all Vermonters have access to affordable, equitable, and quality healthcare, boards and educators can devote all of our energy to providing a world-class education for all of our students. So if you need any more information on this, or the other boards that you serve on need more information on this, I'm more than happy to have open lines of communication. Chris has my email, David has my email. Feel free to contact me and we can get answers to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. I don't know if I should be embarrassed or not. While the Vermont School Boards Association does negotiate on behalf of these boards here, we are not currently members of the Vermont School Boards Association. Okay, is there any additional communication or public comment? Do we have anything in the chat, Chris?
Are there any participants who want to put their hand up who would like to speak? I would recommend that you do that now. We'll wait about 15 seconds. If no hands go up, we can proceed.
Well, Chris, I think we're
Jack-
going to.
Jack Breyer's the only one with his hand up.
Well, Jack Breyer, okay.
Hi, I'm wondering, just so that Olivia's comments aren't left hanging, if in the chair's view, it would be worth talking about this stuff when and putting that as an item in the agenda. Just take a couple of minutes, but I think it might be useful in terms of a dialogue. I'll take a no as ruling, but I'm just asking.
What's the board's pleasure here? I will point out that under communication and public comment, it is the public's opportunity to give advice and direction and comment to the board.
Right.
I am glancing here quickly to see if there's an appropriate place on the agenda where we could possibly consider engaging with Olivia on this. But I also need to know whether the board wants to do that tonight. I can't
Jessa
see it. Chris,
Westclark.
do we have someone in the,
Ms. Westclark
do we
has
have
her
someone
hand
in
up.
the?
Yeah,
in
I
the-
had my. Can we ask Olivia to email the board instead of adding it as an agenda item tonight with her statement or any specifics she wants to send us, either to the SU board or the individual boards, so we have the information. I don't know that there's a lot for us to discuss until we can get some specifics on the proposals and the negotiations that are going on, et cetera, and put it on for the next meetings.
Olivia Clark is queried.
Yes, I can do that. I can email my statements to the board.
Thank you, Olivia. We have kind of a longish agenda tonight anyway.
Mr. Clark,
sir.
Deborah Wright has her hand up as well.
Deb?
No, I just took it down. I agree. If you were looking for who wants to and who doesn't, I was just saying we have a full agenda and more information would be great before we start discussing it. Thank you.
That's fine by me. Thank you. Then the request is withdrawn.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Approved minutes of August 11th, 2021. Can I have a motion on the minutes? Oh, fair enough. Priscilla Lambert has just asked me to find out who's here, and that's probably a pretty good idea. I had presumed we were at quorum. So let me just ask, please, in the remote, Chris, because I can't actually read the screen from here. Who do we have representing the SU board tonight?
Right now, the board members we have with us via Zoom are Deborah Wright, Jack Breyer, Jason Benson, Jessa Westclark. I think that's it.
Deb Wright, Jason Benson,
Jessa
Jessa
Westclark.
Westclark. Jack, what's your status here tonight?
You're muted, Jack.
I've been made the permanent substitute for our recently departed colleague and am now a full voting member of the SU board.
All right, and Jason Terry is not here tonight, I believe, so. Okay. All right. All right, Chris, I'm going to read it off, and if I have made any mistakes here, I would like to hear about it. Present and voting tonight for Bellows Falls Union High School are Deb Wright, myself, Brenda Farkas, For Rock Board, it's Jason Benson and Priscilla Lambert. For Union Elementary, it's Jessa West Clark, Jack Breyer, and Lynn Morgan. Are there any others here in addition to Molly Bannock who are attending in a non-voting capacity? Cheryl Charles, of course, is here as ex officio. Okay, all right. Approved minutes of August 11th, 2021, and thanks for staying on top of me, Priscilla. Minutes of August 2021. Can I have a motion, please? And that motion ideally would be to accept the minutes as presented, and then I'll ask for corrections if there are any. Thanks, Lynn. Okay. I presume everybody has had an opportunity, except me, to peruse the minutes. And are there any corrections? Okay, Priscilla, if you have not had a chance, are there others who are in similar circumstances? Because we could have a move here to table the minutes tonight.
I couldn't find them on the website either.
Okay, all right. In that case, I'm going to ask for a table motion to table, Priscilla. Okay. All right. I'm going to roll call it to see how this sugars off. Jessa West Clark, how do you vote on a table of tonight's minutes?
Yes.
Jack Breyer,
Couldn't find them, yeah.
Lynn Morgan, Jason Benson,
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert, Deb Wright,
I couldn't find him, so I agree. However, I want to say I can't hear Priscilla Lambert, so I don't know if she doesn't have a microphone, which means when she speaks, there's nothing, no sound.
well, Matt Farkas has advised us to get it as close as we possibly can. So maybe that's the strategy for tonight.
It's my fault. It was off.
And Brenda Farkas, how do you vote? Okay, minutes are tabled. We will take them up at our next meeting. Reports, Superintendent of Schools, school reopening. Chris,
Yes.
you're on.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to, I gave my big, long 9-page report at the last meeting. So tonight I just want to bring some updates in regards to where we are since then. My general letter went out to families. I also sent a letter out to all teachers, faculty, and staff. The welcome back letters. If everyone keep in mind that the letters that are coming from each individual school will be going out shortly, and they would be more detailed information in regards to the specifics in regards to masks, because it is not same for all the districts after the 10 days. So the specifics behind that will be coming from each individual school administrator to parents. In that letter, I gave my quick welcome opening statement, followed by I cut and paste what was sent out on August 4th. Let me just call it up for you real quick. So this is the memo that was put out to the superintendents and heads of independent schools by Secretary French and Dr. Mark Levine, Commissioner of Health, on August 4th. So in the first part of my letter, you will see that you have my welcome back. And then towards the bottom, you'll see the cut and paste with the links provided that we as superintendents and independent school heads received. So that's what you have in the second part of the letter. And the reason I put that in there is, for the most part, school boards did agree to follow the guidelines by the state for the first 10 days only. Some school boards are going to revisit after 10 days. And keep in mind that as of right now, we do not have any vaccination options for students 12 or younger. So what that looks for mask wise, we'll continue to to look at. I think for the most part, we're still in a better place than we were last year. But we still have to keep in mind, this is going to be a fluid process, and we're going to continue to make decisions based on what is the safest for students and staff in each of the buildings. So, like I said, I sent those out the other day. The other thing I want to mention is to the board, and I will be sending this out tonight after the board meeting. I received this from the executive director of the VSA, which is a memo that was put out by the Vermont School Board Association in the VPA. This is for FY purposes only. I'm only sharing it with you so you can see what is out there, being put out there by the different agencies. And so you'll be getting that later on tonight. But like I said, it's FYI only. I don't support it. I don't condone it. It's just passing on information I feel the board should have with them as part of their toolbox as we continue to navigate these difficult times and tough decisions that we have to make. So other than that, I'll just open it up for questions.
Questions for the superintendent. Chris, are any questions? I see Jack Breyer's hand. Jack?
Yeah, in terms of the protocols for testing, what are they? Are we still doing the temperature check thing, or are we going to go to what's been recommended, which is a full testing as frequently as weekly? Because given asymptomatic COVID and the likelihood it can be spread without spiking a temp with some young people, I'm wondering what we plan to do.
Well, as far as the administration right now, we've, based on what the boards have voted on, we have a different ways is we could offer testing for anyone who wants it as they're coming into the school. I have a meeting with the nurses because, as you all know, it's changing on a regular basis. So I have a meeting with the nurses tomorrow to discuss those type of situations. Jack, are we going to test everyone coming into the building like we did last year? Or, what is the latest recommendation? And based on that, like I said, these are boards' decisions. The boards I'll have to come back to the boards and give them that information to decide whether or not we want to do the health checks as all students and staff are entering the buildings again. But right now, as we know that all students have to, wear masks on the buses, we're not doing the first point of contact for the surveillance testing that we've done in the past. But that does not mean that we won't do some sort of surveillance testing at the schools. But at this point, I have to meet with the nurses first and see what their recommendations are based on the current situation.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, what I'm really focusing on is temperature check versus something that's a little bit more scientific. And I guess I'll wait till you hear from your nursing staff for a recommendation. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that is accurate. We all read some, people believe that temperature checks, by the time, they have it, they're asymptomatic, the temperatures won't even show up. Surveillance testing, everyone, going into the building, same thing, asymptomatic. That's why I need to rely on my health professionals that are in the schools on a day-to-day basis. And I will come back with a recommendation to the board based on what the nurses are telling me. And as soon, when I'm finished with my meeting, I will send a general update of the thoughts of the nurses to my board chairs so they have that.
Anyone else? Priscilla Lambert.
No.
Push the rectangle and it should turn green. You're on, Priscilla.
Yes, in the letter that was sent out, I have a concern because I have a copy of the memo from the Secretary of Education French and Dr. Levine that does not include the guidance where it says the guidance contains the following recommendations. And it's talking about requiring masking for everyone to enter. It's also requiring, talking about vaccines. It's also stating that students and staff refusing to wear a mask would not be allowed in the school, since Brattleboro was requiring masking. And the governor says that they cannot do that. We're not under an emergency requirement. That brings up an issue there if we're saying that, you know, someone absolutely has to if they refuse. So I'm just wondering how you're planning to handle that since you put that out in a letter.
Yeah.
And it was not part of the memo, but it's made to look like that in the
Well,
thing.
that-
I'm sure you didn't mean to do
No,
that.
that wasn't the intention. It's,
I'm sure you didn't.
it-
I'm just saying it looks
No.
that way. So I was just.
no, I
brought up
agree. I can see
concerns.
that, but I appreciate you bringing it up. You know, that list, I did add a few things. I did put that on there because based on the various statements and recommendations that we're getting, like for instance, like the state's pretty much saying that we can do more, we just can't do less. And so with all of the boards right now saying for the first 10 days, for the most part, we're all going to wear the mask. After the 10 days, it might look different for each board. But in those 10 days, we're requiring everyone to wear masks. So that's why that piece is in there. After the 10 days, it could look very different. For instance, the high school, after 10 days, you know, masks aren't part of the plan. So I think it's one of those cases that trying to be as precise as possible has been very difficult, but I appreciate you bringing that up because this is just for the first 10 days. After the 10 days, we'll be back at putting more memos out based on the board's recommendations and requirements to the administration on how to keep safe, masked or unmasked. So I would say to the public that even though this is the welcome letter, I would look at it as this is the welcome letter for the first 10 days of school. And because we don't want to get tied into what happened last year with remote learning. And so a lot of boards are going to be revisiting it after the 10 days to see whether or not we loosen up or tighten up. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the boards. We don't want to be tied in right now. If the choice is up to us, we want to make sure that that choice stays up to us in regards to how we approach what's going on. So I'm hoping that. So I'm glad you brought it up. This is I say it's a welcome back for the first 10 days, and we're going to have to go back and visit it like we did all last year. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Also in the recommendations from.
Close to the mic, please, Priscilla, and I think you need your green light on.
Oh, up here. Okay. Also in the ones from the state in the memo, I wanted to point out that it says masks when required may be removed when needed for instructional or operational purposes. And I think that's an important thing because I think our teachers then have the ability to be giving instruction and having it off. And also when it's too long a period of time, that gives them the opportunity. And I know I've tried to point that out because it gives them the opportunity to adjust to what's happening in their classrooms. It gives them the opportunity to look at what their needs are right at that moment. And they are not tied into that strict, oh, we can't take
Right.
them off. We can't do this. We can't do that. It allows for
Yes, Priscilla, that's accurate. In the guidance that we've agreed to follow for the first 10 days of school is that teachers do have the right to give permission to the students to remove their mask for instructional purposes. And also keep in mind, I think it's worth noting that when they're outside, they don't have to wear the masks as well. So even though we're starting a school year, at least for the first 10 days with masks, there are exceptions that we have now that we did not have last year. And I think an important one is like Priscilla mentioned, that teachers have the leeway to say, you know, have kids take off their masks for instructional purposes. But I'll keep in mind that we're still going to do our best to keep everything at least a 3-foot minimum. We're not tied into the 6 foot. So we're still looking at, when possible, keep everything at 3 feet. And teachers have more leeway. Masks don't need to be worn outside. So I think we're in better shape than last year. But like I said, this is only for the first 10 days of school.
Any additional follow-up, Priscilla, before we keep going?
Thank you for some parents when they're writing in and saying, well, we don't want our kids to have to be wearing masks and stuff. I think they need the real, that's the teacher has
Right.
a lot of control over that and can help those students and can work with them, as well as those parents that want their kids to be wearing them all the time. We have both sides. So we're trying to be sure that their children are safe and that they can keep them on. And even if down the road, we don't require masks or anything, if some student wants to wear them or feels, they need that, of course they can do that.
Right.
We're not saying that there's any restrictions that way either. So
No, I appreciate it because lately I've had information overload and I can't remember what I've shared or what I haven't shared. So I say anyone who wants to chime in, please do so, because there's chances are that somewhere along the way, I'm going to miss something, but please know it's not intentional. It's called information overload. So thank you.
All right, I want to recognize Cheryl and then Jack.
Thank you. I have a question, Chris, about food services. Let me start just by, again, Harley Sterling and his entire team and staff have done such an amazing job providing food so much of last year and throughout the summer. I think your letter indicated that people would be applying for free and reduced, and yet I understand that we can provide meals again. So would you clarify that, please?
Yeah, it's my understanding that we're still on the same plane as last year in regards to providing people with the meals. So I don't want people to worry about that. We're also going to keep in place some of the things that worked last year for us, just so we can continue to err on the side of caution, where we're going to have the grab and go breakfast. We learned that we're allowed to have more people take advantage of their breakfasts. So we are going to continue that. So as far as the food program, it's my understanding as of today, nothing's really changed in how we approached it last year or over the summer. But during the school year, even though we don't have to, there are some things that we learned from last year we want to continue. Grab and go breakfast for kids. It gives more kids the opportunity. And for the first 10 days, I think some schools, like we're still working it out, have decided we're still going to eat in the classrooms rather than putting everyone in the cafeteria. So we are erring on the side of caution for the first 10 days until everyone's back in the building. And hopefully the state will get us that 80% information that we need to say who's vaccinated or not. So I'm going to remain guardedly optimistic that most of us will be at 80% and the conversations will look a lot different the next time around the table. So I hope that answered your question.
All set, Cheryl? Jack Pryor.
Thank you. It may be useful for folks to know that instructional purpose is one of those terms that gets used maybe loosely, but it has a very distinct, definition that's both posted at the Principals Center online, and it's also posted by the U.S. Department of Education. An instructional purpose is if there's a specific task or an activity that is going on in the classroom that, in the judgment of the instructor, requires students either to be together, or I guess in this case, not wear a mask, or assemble in a different way than they might otherwise, or be outside. That's a definition of an activity that's being undertaken for an instructional purpose. It's not just sort of instructional purposes generally. It's a specific task. It's a specific thing that's being done where people are being gathered together or being put under certain circumstances for a very specific reason. And I hear it being used a little more loosely than either the DOE or the Principals Center would use it. And I want to just put that out there. It's principalcenter.com is a good place to get an understanding of what the term means.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Jessa
Chris?
West Clark had her hand up previously.
I was about to ask you if we had any hands that I couldn't see. Jessa West Clark?
I just had a comment that Priscilla, there was a second memo issued on the 18th about masks in schools. I didn't know if you had that from the AOE. And then I just wanted to mention that Priscilla's mic does seem to cut out once in a while. Like the second statement she made, we couldn't hear at all, but then it comes back. So.
Thank you, Jessa. Anyone else? Chris, anyone else I can't see?
Nope, not that I know of. I just wanted to end with one quick statement, if you don't mind.
We have an other down here. Anything else? Under principals report, pardon me, superintendent's report before we keep moving?
No, that's it. I just want to say, just let the public know is that, I can only speak for myself, is that I understand that masks are a very political thing. And and I'm not standing on one side or the other. My job and my administrative job and the teacher's job, first and foremost, is making sure that we're keeping every student healthy and safe. And we don't worry about the 99% that are okay. It's our job to focus on that 1%. So we want to work with parents in every way, whether their child has, a medical condition or they haven't been vaccinated. We understand. We want to work with you. But it's a shame that the masks have become a political issue. And I feel that if it means we're going to keep all students and staff safe in this building, the inconvenience of wearing a mask for at least 10 days, I think we have nothing to lose by doing it, and we have a lot to lose by not. So I just wanted to put that out there. Even before the educating of kids, we will and always will put the safety of the students and staff first. So, thank you all to the public for, as we move forward for this year and for everything last year. And then we just look forward to the days ahead where we don't have to talk about masks and vaccinations. So thank you all.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, finance, purchasing guidelines. I believe this might be you, Flora.
I think this one works. So I did send on Sunday to all of you the
Flora,
update.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Fact TV has suggested we get just about as close as we possibly can to these mics. Is that good?
So I sent on Sunday the updated policy and guidelines. So I did hope that everybody got to review it because we have 16 different sections. But right now, what we want to present is the fact of the procurement steps. So we could just move on and go forward with our grants approvals. And that's something that I believe Mr. Clark was gonna bring to you guys, so we could just get approved the micro purchases for a threshold of $15,000 and the small purchases set to $40,000.
Okay, Flora, and those are federal guidelines?
Yes, so the micro purchase, you can see that on page 22. So that was set up as 50, but we are setting it at 15. So the idea to have it set up as 15 is just to have a control of the funds that are getting spent. And as well, so we could just have quotes and have competitive prices.
Thank you, Flora. I have a small procedural issue here, and that is that we are under reports and you are asking us to take action. And what I would like to find out from the board is that because we do have a couple of additional action items which are very much related to purchasing and the federal grants under 6, those are 6F and 6G. By the board's leave, I would like to see if we can consider it at that time. I am well aware, and I will point out for the benefit of anyone who is not familiar with it, we do under the open meeting law, at least according to the Vermont School Boards Association, of which we are not members, we can amend an agenda at the beginning of the meeting to include action items, although it's this chair's personal desire not to do that if we don't absolutely have to. And I'm simply going to suggest that when we get down to 6E, probably 6F, which says allow ability of cost procedure for goods and services and authorizing the chair to sign on behalf of the board. And 6G, fiscal year 22 SU annual threshold determination and authorizing the chair to sign on behalf of the board, which I realize is federal boilerplate. I would like to see if maybe we can by heaven help me, the term left me. I want to see if we can kind of move that through as a 6H. If there are objections, obviously we're going to have to get it on the agenda. But if there's not, Flora, that's where I would like to handle it.
Yes, all of it goes together because most likely we do have the same purchasing guidelines that we had throughout the years. It's just the update because of the new federal guidelines according to grants.
Thank you, Flora.
Thank you.
So we will move that down to 6, new business for discussion action, and see what happens. We have an item here under reports, which is 5C, negotiations committee updated, possible executive session. And Deb, I'm going to ask you if you want that executive session, but first I do want to point out that we have an item A under 11, which is for possible executive session, which is grievance. And Olivia Clark, who I think is well read in on those grievances, if you would like to have Olivia here to explain why those grievances were brought, and I'm sure she has a pretty good idea of why they were brought, then we could include her if the board wishes to do so. But I just want to get a sense, and I'm going to start with you, Deb, as to whether it's worth Olivia's time to stick around for that, or whether she can early pass out of here. Deb, what's your preference on that?
Well, concerning the grievance you just brought up, a backstory would be good. If tonight was an appropriate time to do it, would be best done in an executive session. If indeed that's not what we need to do, then that I have the information you provided. I've read that, but if additional information or backstory should be given, that's where we'd need to do it. Yes. So that's your choice. Up to you, David.
Okay. Well, I'm actually going to defer to the supervisory union board. Would there be any objection to taking testimony, I'll call it, from Olivia Clark when we get down to that executive session? I'm not hearing any. So Olivia, if you don't mind sticking around, we'll try to get there fairly quickly. Okay.
I'm sorry, David. 1 point. This is Deborah.
Yes, Deb, go ahead, please.
Usually we do, and when there's the opportunity to, an update on negotiations from the committee to see where we are right now, excluding the item you've just brought up. So would you still like that?
Deb, if it can be done in executive session, I would love to do it that way.
Well, it doesn't need to be.
Deb, I misspoke. If we can do it in an open session,
yes,
it would be great.
That's what I'm asking to do. Yeah, just take a minute, if that's okay. The negotiating team met with the teachers last week. I believe that's correct. And we have settled on our ground rules and we signed on them so we can move forward to our next meeting, which will be actually exchanging proposals as of September 15th. I would think interimly that the negotiating team should meet so we can define those properly before presentation and present them at the 15th meeting in September. The one thing I would like to point out is that these will be open sessions. I don't know, I know the board isn't all aware of that, but there will be open sessions of the teachers and negotiating team from the WNESU. They will not be open meetings.
Hold on, Deb, we're just having technical difficulties with the sound. If you just give us 2 seconds.
Sure.
She sounds fine to those of us at home.
How is it now?
Just as good.
Okay. So yes, if you
Deb, why
didn't
don't you
get
try
that.
talking, see if we can hear you.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Nope, just give us 1 more second.
Maybe my microphone.
I don't think it's you, Deb. I think it's the Fact TV or something.
Well, I figured if I turned it off and on.
Yeah, you're
we-
plenty
we-
loud here.
Yeah, we can hear you, Deb. It's gonna be something
In the room. Yep.
Okay, Deb, why don't you try it again?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure what I lost, but ground rules are signed. Next meeting is September 15th with the teachers. And the important one that I think that should be pointed out is these will now be open sessions. There will be no closed negotiations. There will be an opportunity for the public to listen in. They're listening sessions only for the public. It's not under open meeting law. There will be no warnings. We will simply post a meeting with a Zoom link. That's it. I think that's what I had to say. And I think Jack's got his hand up too.
Thank you. Jack Breyer. Jack, I believe you may be muted.
Yeah, so it's not a mic issue. The thank you to Deb and to everybody. I think that this is a step in the right direction, and everybody's going to find out. It won't hurt at all. One question to the chair on this grievance. Have we confirmed this is a WN Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union employee as opposed to a particular district employee? I just want to make sure that we're grieving to the right group. And now, David, your mic is off.
Oh, I just turned my mic off. I'm sorry. I believe that these grievance were actually the employee of the SU, Chris. Is that correct?
I believe I'd have to look. I mean, do you know, Olivia?
Because we would not be the appropriate board to bring it to if it is a, Rockingham School District or a unified district, and I don't want to waste Olivia's time or this board's.
I think it's across the board in regards to some of the issues.
I'm not sure how comfortable I am speaking the specific and open session. I don't really want to say anything else, but.
I'm wondering if we might be able to get that mic on yet again.
So Jack, I'm going to defer here to Olivia in just a moment. I think we're far better to get to executive session when we discuss this grievance and decide if it's an appropriate topic for this board than to try to hash it out here in public. I think that might, shall we say, potentially compromise some of the parties here.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure we didn't waste anybody's time.
All right. New business for discussion and action. 6A is elect assistant chairperson. And when this board reorganized, it elected Cheryl Charles as its assistant chairperson, and Cheryl's done a great job of discharging those duties. But unfortunately, Cheryl did resign from Union Elementary in favor of taking a substantial role in what will be Westminster School Board. In fact, I believe, Cheryl, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually the chair of Westminster School Board, which is an organization with very limited powers and duties right now. So we are left without a member from the 4 boards to serve as an assistant chairperson. So given that, I would like to accept nominations. I'm going to ask if there are any nominations coming from Zoom. Anyone?
I've thought about this a lot and would really think that Jessa Westclark would add great value to this.
Jessa, would you be willing to accept that nomination?
If there's no one else who had a planned nomination for this evening, I would do that, sure.
Well, Jessa, I will ask if there are any additional nominations before I seek a motion to close nominations. Are there any other nominations? Anyone here at the high school? All right, then I would like to entertain a motion to close nominations and direct the chair, actually the clerk, sorry, to cast one ballot for Jessa West Clark as the assistant chair. Can I have that nomination, please? Lynn Morgan, would you be willing to make that nomination? Or that rather close it? Okay, all right. All those in favor of electing Jessa West Clark as the assistant chair, I will poll you. Jack Pryor,
Since I made it and hope that you won't resent me for it, yes.
Lynn Morgan, Jason Benson,
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert, Deb Wright,
Aye.
thank you, and Brenda Farkas.
Aye.
Well, Jessa, thank you for assuming your new responsibilities. Okay, scratch that one off. Set date, excuse me, set date for executive committee meeting Wednesday, May 1st. I added this to the agenda because it is very much related to item 6C, which is set date for special meeting on goals for grant spending and expenditures accounting. And the purpose of a meeting of the executive committee on Wednesday, September 1st would be for the opportunity to have a preview of that presentation from administration. That would give administration, I believe, very useful guidance as to how they might want to wish to fine tune it when it comes to the supervisory union board, presumably on September 8th. And I'm going to simply warn that executive committee meeting for Wednesday, September 1st at a time to be determined. Deb, I'm ready to recognize you, I think.
My apologies. I didn't realize my line was on. It was the 1st or the 8th. I'm not sure. You said 2 days.
Okay. Executive committee on the 1st to do a preview of a presentation for a supervisory union meeting on September 8th, where I think we're going to get deep in the weeds with ESSER grants and ESSER accounting and what the goals of administration are for applying ESSER funds in a way to get the maximum bang for the buck for all of the schools here, and most especially the kids in Wyndham Northeast. So as I said, if no objections, I will be setting an executive committee meeting for Wednesday, September 1st. I will check in with the members who are the board chairs to make sure we have a time that works for everyone. Any objections?
What, Ms.
Lynn.
Hart,
I'm going to recognize, I've got, Lynn's got it, Jack, and I'll get
Fine.
back to you.
My calendar, I have an SBE withdrawal meeting at 3 o'clock. I have an SBE withdrawal meeting.
I think that means State Board of Education.
Okay.
And given that the executive committee is made up of the board chairs or their designees, unless Jack were to designate you as his alternate, I don't think he would be conflicted with that
Okay.
date and time.
Okay.
Jack,
just want to make sure that our emerging Westminster School Board and its chair are represented at that executive committee meeting, if at all possible.
that would be my expectation.
Thank you.
Molly Bannock,
Please not before 6 o'clock at night.
thank you, Molly. That's the kind of feedback I was looking for.
That would work for me too, because I have.
Okay. Okay, time, Priscilla?
Mike, please.
I was commenting that Molly's recommendation for after 6 was good for me also, because I have another scheduled thing that I'm trying to set up for 4 o'clock. So that would work for me.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Priscilla. We'll nail that down. Okay, the next item is to let you know that I anticipate that we will hold a WNSU special meeting on the 8th, where, as I said before, we can talk all about ESSER, what we want to do, how we are going to account for it, and I hope that that will make this board very well read in on some of the great things that I think the administration has been working hard on to utilize those funds as efficiently as we possibly can. Okay. Oh, yes, we have here ratify Director of Operations position. Deb, do I have a motion?
Yes, with question, but I'll make the motion. I move that we ratify, is that Jim DeBell's contract as, oh, good God, I totally spaced the motion. Give me a minute, would you? I had it right here. I lost it.
Deb, I'll read your motion back. You tell me if I got this correctly. I move to ratify the appointment of Jim DeBell as Director of Facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. I have a motion on the floor. Priscilla Lambert, do I have an amendment?
Yes, I'd like to amend that to
Covered by the
as covered by the grant, well, covered by the grant funding, the ESSER grant funding.
Okay. Deb, would you be willing to accept Priscilla's motion, probably amendment as a friendly amendment?
I would.
Okay. So a brief restatement, and I want the makers of the motion and the friendly amendment to correct me if I'm wrong, but the motion is to move to ratify the appointment of Jim DeBell as Director of Facilities, and that would be covered by the ESSER grant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to ask for discussion in just a moment, but I do want to ask Superintendent Pratt, is there anything he would like to add at this time? Because I think we're going to sail right through this.
Sure. This is one of two positions that, just to go back, when I was first hired, this was one of the, I can't even remember which board person brought it up to me, is that it's a position that I might want to look into because we had the air unit project that was coming up at the high school. Going down the road, there was some driveway projects. We had some heating issues in the middle school, and we had an elevator problem at Saxons River. So these are one of those positions that recommended that I look into. Based on the way the current status was, we really didn't have money at that point to look into a position like that. Rick Schulman has been taking on a lot of those duties, but he is spread thin. And so this is a position we looked at using ESSER money as seed money to get this position in, because it is anticipated that with all the updates some of these schools are going to be needing, a good example is that, as we talked about the units here at the high school, the driveway, possibly the driveway project, possibly a roof project at the central school. It's a lot of projects going on, and the principals just don't have the time or capacity to be the experts on those, and neither do their, the people in the facilities, people at that building. So it was my plan to use ESSER money to seed that, and hopefully between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we have quite a bit of time to plan for as we go through the years for working that into the local budget. Out of all the different things we have in ESSER, understand that we know as administration that any positions that are filled under ESSER, it's sold right up front that they are, as long as the grant is intact, the ESSER grant or what have you. It's not our job to use ESSER money to fill positions that are going to, when the ESSER money runs out, to leave the taxpayers holding the bill. That is not the intention. We're looking at structural things. So any positions that may be filled under the grant, with the exception of the Director of Operations, and to continue the front office clerk that
That's a position currently being filled by Marie. Chris, is that correct?
It was right now for the past month. It has not been filled. And that was a position that we once had. And in our current space, we didn't feel that we need when we had Sue Stack in my office, we didn't need someone else just right outside the door doing the same thing. So we cut back on that. But I guess my point is that out of everything to do with the grants, those are the only two positions we're looking at moving forward with, because it's going to save us time and money, so we don't have to go outside and find someone else. So that's what I wanted to just address under everything going on with the grants and everything. We know we're trying to find ways to, whether it's 5 years or 10 years down the road, that we're getting projects done and getting things done. They're going to lessen the tax impact on taxpayers and use ESSER money to do that. And these are the only two positions I would recommend, once the ESSER grants run out in 2023, that we continue to fund these two positions based on what we need to do moving forward. So that's all I wanted to say to the public.
Thanks, Chris. Any additional discussion under the motion? Do I have anyone? Oh, Jack, I see your hand now. Yes. And then go ahead, Jack.
Chris largely answered it, which was the concern about making sure we didn't build positions that we'd have to fund. And he's made an argument for why that would be a good idea. I do want to remind board members that we have talked over and over again at various points about consolidating the maintenance function more generally under the SU. And I would like to ask our chair to put that as an agenda item before budget, because I'd like to know if that's something we might do. We've managed to consolidate transportation. This is another item where I think there's efficiencies if we looked at our various maintenance people as a team rather than individual employees of individual districts.
Jack, what's your timetable for having that discussion? I know you said before budget. Is there a specific part of a specific month that you're recommending?
I think the ESSER stuff is going to end up eating up the September, but I'd like to make sure that we do it by October and have some, if people think that's going to be enough time. I mean, we could talk about it in October and make a decision in November, but it really can't be past that because we'll be past budget time. And I'd like to know if this is something we want to move forward or we're going to push it off yet another year.
Jack, with your leave, I would like to query Flora Pagan, the business manager, who might be able to give us some guidance.
Hi, I did put the agenda out. We are starting the budget already, planification September, the week of September 13.
Right.
So I believe that if we are gonna take this into consideration, maybe we should do it on September 1st or the 8th to have a decision by those days. So that way, when we plan the budget on the week of the 13th, we have all of this in place.
Flora, I'm going to ask you a question with Jack's leave here. And that is, do you anticipate that your budgets will be complete by our regular meeting date on the 4th Wednesday of September?
No, we are starting the meeting to review the budgets with all those schools principals on September 13th.
Okay. I think that Jack is talking about essentially a district-wide consolidation of maintenance. And my assumption, Jack, and please you correct me if I'm wrong, is that amounts budgeted locally would then pour over into a WNESU budget, similar to the way we sometimes apportion teachers between schools, where we have a teacher who's 50% in one school and 50% in another. Is that your understanding, Jack?
You're kind of reading my mind. That's what I'd like to have us do if we can. Again, the idea eventually is to have this be as flexible as possible so that we don't have somebody cleaning floors in one place that can't clean them in the other two or three other buildings. So yeah, let's go with that.
Well, for my response here, and of course this board can overrule me, is that I think we will do well if we get to the 4th regular meeting on the 4th Wednesday, where I presume we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking budget. And this would seem to me to be, a logical place to put it. So anyone else on this topic? Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I can work with Flora in seeing what it looks like once we take it out of the local budgets and put it and combine it into the SU level like we've done with transportation, and we tried to do with technology. At least it'll give you an idea of what it takes away from the schools and what it puts on the SU budget. And so that's something, we can work on because, we've done it in the past with other areas.
We also, Chris, I'm going to suggest might be able to utilize the executive committee if you need guidance on the fly. And when I say on the fly, in the form of a special meeting with sufficient advance notice so you can get an executive committee there. Okay, Jack, I appreciate that.
David,
Yes, Deb.
I have a technical question. I was the maker of the motion initially. However, I have a technical concern. The board can't ratify an appointment when the board didn't initially make the motion to appoint.
Well, Deb, here's my response to you. We have found at times that we have taken actions that we felt should be ratified after the fact. I think that Chris Pratt's in a position to speak to this specifically, Deb.
Yeah, so it's kind of a unique situation because, technically, when the superintendent's authority to hire is outside, without board's approval, it's anyone who does not hold a Vermont license. So typically in the past, under the superintendent's authority is that I don't need board approval to fill those positions such as an administrative assistant or custodian or director of operations. And I think with the board's involvement here is approving the ESSER funds for this position. The other way is that, it would just go into, I would find room into my local budget bottom line. So I understand what you're saying. I think it's a unique situation is that I'm looking for and this was, his position was approved. We started believing using ESSER 1 money, which we know then we didn't really, it was one of those situations where we needed looking at this position to get the schools up and going and everything. So it's nothing that I've dealt with before in the past, because usually I can just hire those, at will positions. But with this here, now that the board wants to make sure that they're approving the ESSER funds, the process was already started during ESSER 1, and now we're in ESSER. So I'm looking to continue that with ESSER 2 and 3 grants. So that's why it wasn't brought to the board initially. It was one of those positions that I have the authority to fill it. And I filled it starting with ESSER 1 money, but now I need further approval by the board to continue to support it for ESSER 2 and 3 until 23. And so if it's approved, it gives me time to work it into the budget. So when the grant runs out, we can continue to support this position. And I know we can do that. It's just a matter of me going through the budget and maybe even combining the department, like Jack said, to find that money.
Deb, I want to own some of this. And I am aware that this was an initiative that administration had a great deal of interest in. I think, as you do as well, hold to the belief that and that's based on statute, that the board holds ultimate hiring and firing authority, as well as the ultimate responsibility for both policy and finance. I think that the board does well to formally acknowledge and ratify this hire, because I think it's pretty clear that we expect to derive substantial benefit from it. And when I say I want to own it, and that is, it really would have been my responsibility to make sure that this had come to the board's attention before the hire was actually made. And from that perspective, I think it's important that the board acknowledge that it supports this hire. I would certainly anticipate that we would do a better job, your chair and administration, in liaising with this board going down the road if it was felt strongly that additional positions within the SU administration were needed. So we're correcting an oversight here so that there's a clear understanding of what the parameters of the job and the financing of that job actually are. So back to you, Deb.
No, that I understand it. I don't like doing it this way, but you know, but I do understand the point. And I did make the motion, right? So there we are.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? Cheryl Charles.
Just a couple of questions. We've got in the agenda the title Director of Operations. The motion read Director of Facilities. I wonder, are we talking about two different things, or is it the same position?
That is the same position.
Yes. The actual job title is Director of Operations.
Director of Operations, then we might want to amend the motion to read
Okay,
that way.
we're under a main motion on the basis of a friendly motion, and either Deb or Priscilla, if you would just like to correct that to Director of Operations, that'd be a big help.
I
And then
would
I have
agree
another-
It's okay with me. And
I
Deb,
would agree with that. Yes.
Okay, so we're under a motion on Director of Operations. Anybody else before we get to the vote again, Cheryl?
Right. The other thing I was going to say is that the superintendent has said, and these ESSER funds would fund this position until 2023, I believe is what you said. And it makes so much sense to me to have someone in this role kind of looking at the big picture around infrastructure and facilities improvements and things like that. And in particular, to do it now in anticipation of the larger monies that will come with the ESSER 3, which are dedicated to physical improvements and things of that kind. So I do think it's a wise thing to do and will give us a lot of experience
Thank you.
before even more of those funds come our way. So thank you for the,
You're welcome. We're just trying to be proactive.
thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. Priscilla Lambert.
it's on for once. I do appreciate Deb's concern over the fact that the board is the one that creates positions and it has to go to their authority to create them. And so it.
Priscilla's mic is out again.
I do appreciate Deb's concern that it was not a position that was brought to us first, and which it should have been, because it's the board's right and responsibility to create positions in response to the need.
We seem to be on voluntary mute again.
All right, where was I? So I do realize the concern out there, and bringing to us ahead of time would be really good, but with all the ESSER funds being thrown at us and all the stuff that's going on, I also understand how difficult that has been for everybody to be on top of things. So recognizing the fact that this was something that we wanted to try out and make sure that we were on top of things with all the extra stuff that we are having to do in the next couple of years. That's one reason why I asked to amend it to what was covered by the ESSER grants. And I think it's an absolutely appropriate position to have oversight of everything that's going on.
Thank you, Priscilla. Are we ready for the vote? Anyone else before we get there? Okay, I'm going to roll call it then. Deb Wright,
Aye.
Brenda Farkas.
Aye.
Jason Benson,
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert,
Yes.
Jessa West Clark,
Yes.
Jack Breyer.
Yep.
Lynn Morgan. All right, thank you. We have a motion. I would like to strike 6E, which says create grant managers personal assistant position, because this is, I think, a crossed wire between your chair and administration. And I think it may actually involve that second administrative position. So I'd much rather bring it back at the regular meeting, Chris, in September, so that I'm
Yeah.
sure that everybody's on the same page before we try to explain this one to the board. I once again apologize to the board because I think I'm responsible here for the confusion of this motion.
This was just this is a position that it's not a new position. It's just the reception position that we've always had. And so we'll bring it back to the board because we're just looking for a receptionist and add to their duties besides answering the phone is assisting with organization of grants. So it's not a new position. It's the position that Nicole used to have.
Okay, and I want to bring that back at the regular meeting in September so that we clearly define what that position does, and if there are questions of salary or anything of that nature, we can cover it.
Can I ask a question on that,
Priscilla.
Chair? Yes, but that position was cut out of our budget by the board. And so therefore that position is really not, that second position really is not there any longer. It is not, sitting there ready to be filled for anything because we cut it when we did our budget. So it's no longer a position. So for bringing it, if there's a need by administration, then it should come back to us. And if most of that is because of the grant positions, then it should go under being brought back under the ESSER grant funding still at our next meeting, not as just a general thing, because I think the grants that are out there is what's causing the need.
Yeah, it's currently not filled. It's not.
Okay.
It's an empty
Well, it
position right
shouldn't be
now.
because we cut it.
With all due respect here, what I want to point out is that on the 8th, the board will be discussing ESSER. We can add an action item on the 8th if we need to. And once again, Priscilla, I appreciate your pointing out the need to be able to act timely on this, and I think we will have sufficient time to do that. Chris, you have follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. I think it's important that, that I understand what the board's saying, but if you look at Title 16, subsection 542, 3A, it's very clear. I do have the authority to fill these positions. That's a state statute. And I'm working with the board. Like I said, these are unique situations and I get it, but this position is not filled. I haven't filled it, and I'm leaving it up to the board under ESSER to fill that position, whether or not we fill it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm looking forward to being able to, board and administration work together to advance what the goals are of the supervisory union, because the bottom line is always trying to deliver as much as we possibly can for the kids who go to our schools. And we have really good schools. And one of the reasons we have really good schools is that we generally seem to be able to work really well as a cohesive team. And we certainly want to emphasize the importance of that cohesiveness.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So we are back down to item F, which is allowability of cost procedure for goods and services, and authorizing the chair to sign on behalf of the board. Can you unwind this one for us, please, Flora?
You hear me? Okay. So for our procurements, we need to have a threshold set. So the business office is recommending that the threshold gets set as a micro purchase threshold of $15,000 and the small purchase as $40,000. And if that gets approved, then we will update our policy and procedure page 22 with the amounts that gets approved.
Okay, before I ask for a motion, Flora, I'm going to ask you how you came to derive those two numbers. Are those federal recommendations, or where are they from?
So the bid law states the bid should start at $40,000. So that's why we are going with the $40,000.
And that's Vermont state bid law?
Yes.
Thank you. And then the $15,000.
So the $15,000 is the threshold that we had set for a while already. So with the micro purchase, if it is a $15,000 amount, we just have to get quotes to be sure that whatever we're purchasing, it is competitive.
All right, thank you. And Flora, I want to ask you if you could just restate it, what you were looking for a motion one more time, and then I'll look for a maker.
So micro purchase threshold is set at $15,000 and the small purchase threshold is set at $40,000, going with the Vermont state bid
Okay.
law.
Thank you, Flora. Lynn, would you be willing to put that motion on the floor for discussion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for discussion, which is to set the micro purchase level at $15,000 and the $40,000 threshold again, please, Flora?
The small purchase.
Small purchase, okay. A small purchase in my household. All right. Discussion under the motion. Questions? Okay, anyone in the Zoom?
Is it
Oh.
ESSER funds? Are we
Um,
talking about ESSER funds? What are we talking about, Flora? Any grant funds? Okay, and what are typical purchases that would be that would cover?
I can't hear Flora.
Oh,
For example, one of the purchases that we had was a vehicle for driver's ed. So that would have been considered a small purchase. So we went out to bid because it's what the Vermont state law indicates, that you have to go out to bid before any purchases that is $40,000 or over. Then for the micro purchase, if it is $15,000, we would just go and find quotes and be sure that whatever we're purchasing, it is competitive. Everything is stated on the policy and guidelines on page 22.
well, I'm gonna ask you a question. What your motion essentially does here is cause.
Again, mics, please.
Thank you, Priscilla. Flora, I'm just going to ask for clarification. Essentially, what your requested motion here, which Lynn has made, does is cause this board to acknowledge that this is what's required of the board under state statute.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's useful for my understanding. Anyone else here before we get to a vote? All right, does everyone have the motion? All right, let me roll call it, please. Deb Wright,
No.
Brenda Farkas. Yes from Brenda. Jason Benson,
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert.
I don't know.
Do you wish to abstain, Priscilla?
Come back, please.
I'll come back. Jessa West Clark,
Yes.
Jack Breyer.
I did have a question, which is unfortunately, I'm going to have to abstain unless I get it answered.
Does the board wish to let Jack ask his, let me rephrase it. Is there any objection from this board to Jack asking his question before he casts his vote? Go ahead, Jack.
I just want to make understand, for example, we're removing playground equipment out in Grafton, and we have a request, but we didn't put it out to formal bid, but I'm worried that that's going to kick over the threshold under this. Am I wrong in that concern?
Cheryl's, pardon me, Flora, is there a yes or no answer on this?
So Jack, this is for FY22. So that has been put in already for FY21, and the Vermont state bid law just got updated. So that wouldn't qualify. We should be covered in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
And your vote, Jack?
It will be yes, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Morgan,
Yes.
thank you.
Me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Priscilla. Yes, let me come back to you. Priscilla, how do you vote?
I'm going to vote no. I would have voted yes for the 15, but the 40 seems like it's pretty high without coming back to the board.
All right, thank you, Priscilla. Okay, and the other one, Flora, which I'm going to ask you to also help us unwind, fiscal year 22 supervisory union annual threshold determination and authorizing the chair to sign on behalf of the board. Help me with this one. Oh, it's the same thing? Wonderful. Okay,
Good.
we've dealt with 2 items with 1 motion. That's great. Old and unfinished business. This is a resolution on academic assessment. Cheryl did read this out at least and do some explanation of it at the previous SU meeting. But Cheryl, let's begin again. And I'm going to ask you if you would read your resolution, which we will seek a motion on from a voting member. And once you've read it, Cheryl, if you can explain what the intent is, that'd be also very helpful.
All right. Well, if everybody will be patient with me because it's relatively lengthy and it's in a resolution format, which means it's a little more formal than things we often do. Whereas the COVID pandemic has affected students and their families throughout the Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union, whereas it is a responsibility of the school boards to serve as trustees for the academic achievement and overall well-being of the students within the schools, whereas concerns for community health and well-being including and not limited to students as well as all school personnel, led to implementation of models of education whereby some instruction was conducted in a completely virtual environment in cooperation with the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, some in a hybrid model using virtual and in-person in the WNESU school buildings, and some entirely in person in the school buildings during much of the past 18 months. Whereas testing of student achievement has been conducted for students both in the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative Program and in the WNESU school buildings. Whereas ESSER funds have infused and are projected to bring additional resources within the budget of WNESU to help mitigate and recover from the negative impacts of COVID on children's academic achievement, social and emotional well-being, and school engagement. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the WNESU school board and the member school district boards will actively support the implementation and oversight of the WNESU 21-22 recovery plan, including student test scores, progress against goals, assessments of social and emotional health, and financial accountability, with a review of all the results and recommendations for further action. So to make a comment or two about it, David, and then open it to whatever else you.
I just want to get a quick disclaimer in here, Cheryl, and that is simply to point out that we cannot bind the local boards, but we can certainly encourage them to sign on to this resolution as well. So go right ahead, please, Cheryl.
Fair comment. Thank you. This sounds so complicated, and it really is not intended to be, but it does let all of us and the individual school boards, should they choose to take this action, as you just indicated, it just speaks to the seriousness of the impact of COVID on all of us. It speaks to the infusion of a tremendous amount of additional funding that we've been talking about. And it reminds us all as board members to really look at the entire process, to look at the plan, to look at what's going on with students socially, emotionally, and academically. and to look at all of the fiscal aspects of it. So it puts in writing, it documents for us a way to remind all of us, as I say, as board members, to be accountable, to help and to be of support to the teachers, the administration, the entire school community with all of this. And I would say it's meant to be of support to the process that administration has put in place for the recovery planning effort. That's the spirit of it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Can I get a motion, please? The motion would
Jack,
be,
so moved.
thank you. Thank you, Priscilla. All right, discussion. Is there discussion or any questions here at the table?
I'd like to speak to it. I really appreciate Cheryl's doing this resolution. She and I worked really hard on the recovery team, and along with other community members and staff and all kinds of people that are involved with the school and really interested in it. And I think she has really put together a good resolution and a good plan that we should support, especially at the WNESU level. Like she said, the individual boards can support it or not, but I really think that we need to be supportive at this point.
Thank you, Priscilla. Anyone in the Zoom, Chris? I'm not actually seeing anybody in the Zoom, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Do we have anyone in the Zoom, Chris?
No, no questions.
Okay. All right, then I believe we're ready for Priscilla's motion on Cheryl's suggested resolution. Let me find out how we vote. Brenda Farkas.
Yes.
Thank you, Brenda. Deb Wright.
Aye.
Jason Benson.
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert.
Yes.
Jessa West Clark.
Yes.
Jack Breyer.
Yes.
Lynn Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. This will be useful guidance going forward. Let me see here. Appointments and resignations. Do we have any, Chris? Okay, great. Well, that brings us down to director's comments.
Can I ask a question on that? What about the appointments that are under the ESSER grants for those teachers? Were those already done? Those need to be brought to the board, right? As far as teachers?
I think we're about to get an answer.
Thank you, Andy. No, we do have, I'm sorry, Chair. We do have some appointments for special educators. Do you want to present them? Are they special educators? Yeah. I wasn't dodging your question. I'm going to let him present, then we can get back to that.
No, you're fine.
Okay, who can give us some guidance here? Is that you, Andy?
As far as,
Whether we have appointments?
yeah, I do have 4 case managers.
Well, share them with us, please, and we'll
Sure.
get a motion.
So we've had a series of resignations right at the end of the school year. And so we've been actively trying to fill the positions. And so we have 4 educators we'd like to present. The first one is Richard Burbridge. And Richard had worked with us previously as a paraprofessional. He's gone on, gotten his work to get his teaching certification. And so we'd like to bring him on and bring him back into our district as a case manager at the high school. The second one is Lori Greenleaf, who is an educator. She actually lives in town, but she's worked with the Brattleboro School District. We'd like to bring her on as a teacher, what we are calling WIN, which is What I Need. And that was previously our TIDES classroom, which was at Westminster Center School and has been relocated to our Central Elementary School. And Lori comes with a plethora of working with students with behavioral challenges. The third one is Kathleen Dowd, who would be filling the role of Heather Chapman, which was our life skills educator at the high school. And Kathleen Dowd has worked with Wyndham Central, Chris, and Wyndham.
Was a principal there. She also worked in Wyndham Southwest as a behavioral specialist, and now we're looking to hire her here.
Thank you, Chris. I just don't have the resumes in front of me. I
Do
apologize.
you have one more, by the way, Andy?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay.
And then the fourth one is Abel Clare, who has
Excuse me, and there's Abel, A-B-E-L?
ABEL, yes, and Claire is CLAIR. And Abel, we'd like to have join us to fill a position by Linda Prinson's retirement here at the high school. And Abel has worked extensively with the Brattleboro Retreat, at Inspire, and also I believe at Kindle Farms. He's worked. He's also worked at Monadnock Regional School District as a case manager, and bringing him on would greatly fill that role to support our students.
Okay, thank you, Andy. We'll be looking for a motion to hire as per the roster that Andy Haas just gave us, Richard Burbridge.
He didn't give us levels.
Pardon me?
He didn't give us levels being hired at.
Priscilla, can I have that on mic, please?
He didn't give us levels that they were hired at. And usually we have that information. That's been,
I apologize. I know that Nicole had sent the spreadsheet to you, so I didn't go through that. I can go.
we didn't see it.
Do you have the spreadsheet, Andy?
I do. So Richard would be a master's step 6. Lori Greenleaf would be a master step 6. Kathleen Dowd would be a master step 7. And Abel Clare would be a master step 18.
Step what? I'm sorry.
18.
18. Thank you. And we'd already approved all the other, I don't remember doing that. All the other special educators this year,
Those are all of our educators. We
but they were approved to back in the spring. Did we approve those at that time? I don't
no,
remember.
they've just finally been able.
No,
so-
I meant the regular roster. Was that brought to us back in the spring?
No. No,
we
I
don't
mean,
typically.
the position has been approved, but these are replacing those people who may have been on that roster at the time.
No, I just wondered if usually the whole roster is brought to the board for approval, and I don't remember seeing it. That's what I'm asking.
I think I spoke to Nicole about this. There's not a whole lot of positions that with the special ed, they're late. We're bringing them to you as we get them because it's really only special ed at the SU level. And these are the ones that he has thus far.
But are you
Okay.
referring to
But I'm
just
referring to
all
your-
of
all
our
your-
all of our
yeah.
case managers?
Yes.
To be very honest with you, you mentioning it in my 4 years of tenure is the first time I've ever been asked if I bring all of my
No,
teachers
we've
to
done
the
it
board.
all other
So,
boards.
so I can't speak to why
Okay.
that hasn't happened.
I think we did the roster, Priscilla, because I remember
That's what
we
I'm
had,
asking.
we
Yes,
had
just don't
a
remember.
discussion about the unusual number of departures. Do you remember that?
yes, Jessa, you're correct. That was the third week in April. It was during school vacation, and we had quite a long meeting that night. We discussed all of the positions. It was actually April 14th, because the next day was the 15th, and there was a concern that the contracts came in so close to be approved, and they had to be approved because the next day per CBA, they had to be in the teacher's hands. So we did go through them all though at that meeting. I know because I ran the
Thank
meeting.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to know. I thought we must have, but for some reason it's slipping my mind tonight.
I'm sorry,
Thank you
Priscilla,
so
I
much.
misunderstood your question.
Hmm.
This is, yes, like I said, they were on that list, but not their actual names.
Okay, are we ready now to entertain a motion for Richard Burbridge, Masters +6, Linda Greenleaf, Master's Step 6. Kathleen Dowd, Master's Step 7, and Abel Claire, Master's Step 18.
Hey,
Would-
David, if I could, just one correction, it's Lori Greenleaf.
Oh, it's Lori. Thank you.
Yes.
Lori. Greenleaf.
I can't read my own handwriting. Have a motion, please.
So
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, we're under discussion under the motion. Discussion? Okay,
have a
anyone
question.
in the Zoom? Yes, yes, Jessa.
I'm just wondering, we have a new hire we're hiring at step 18. Isn't that unusual?
The Director of Instructional Support Services is queried, I believe.
We have had quite a bit of difficulty finding staff for replacement. It's actually a national crisis that there is a shortage of special education teachers throughout the country. And within Windham County, I've been speaking with the other directors. Many of them are in the exact same position, or if not worse position, of having open positions. And the position that Mr. Clare would be filling with Linda Princeton is a position that's been supporting students here at the high school. She was a highly valued case manager, and we feel that that Mr. Clare can step up and fill those roles. But yes, he does have quite a bit of experience and tenure.
And that position, the position itself rates being both the importance of the position, the qualifications, and the difficulty filling it rate 12 steps above the other hires you're making?
Well, his experience matches what the CBA calls for.
David.
Priscilla Lambert, please.
Yes, it depends on what level of expertise you can get them at, a teacher at. We are by the CBA, I believe it's step 7 that is automatic as far as numbers. Above that, it's negotiated. So depending upon what levels you can hire someone at, you should be looking at I'm sure the administration is considering that and looking at that, because all we have to get, maybe it's step 8 that we can hire up to automatically. I'd have to look at the CBA to see, but above that, it's discussion with the teacher that you're hoping to hire and what level you feel you need to hire them at. So I guess what just is asking you is if you absolutely felt that that was what you needed to offer this person.
Thank you for the clarification, but yes, that is, we were in a situation where we've actually been short-staffed at the high school all through last year with an open position all last year. And then with the resignations of both of Sam McAllister, Heather Chapman, and then Linda Princeton, we were actually down 4 educators at the high school, and there was a need to fill those positions. We've been advertising on School Spring, Indeed, Facebook, everywhere we could to get them. And there have been times we'd interview candidates that were as far as away as Louisiana, trying to get them to entice them to come up. We've had and had them turn us down. We have educators going to other, we'll interview people and they have opportunities at multiple places. And so we've had a lot of discussion with the state. The state has just relaxed the standards on being able to hire special educators so that we can actually try and entice people. But we felt that Mr. Clare
Warranted the step.
Well,
And
Just to confirm, he
Inspire
was,
is-
yeah, he
is
was,
Also a, coming from there, that's at the Meadows, was it the Meadows School, right? The Inspire program that this person is coming from?
he's actually worked at
the-
Meadows, which is with the retreat, and the
Right.
retreat closed their program, but Inspire was its own.
Oh, Inspire is
It's
separate.
on
from
its own
Meadows.
school, the Inspire School. I'm just wondering, what's the title of the position?
It's case manager.
And how many case managers do we have in district currently that are master's level employees?
I don't
Because
have that information right in front of me, but
you're bringing in a new hire at step 18 and we have current positions where people are being paid less than that. Are you going to be adjusting their salaries, or are we going to get an equity complaint through the union?
I can answer that, Jessa. So in short, his steps weren't fluffed, or we didn't arrange to give him extra steps just so we could get him. We go through the resume very carefully and he has to, qualify, 1 for 1. So even though we need teachers very bad, we don't, give them extra steps or anything like that. If they have the qualification, we give them. If they don't get it. And then it's up to them whether they want to take the job. Is it unusual to have someone with that much experience apply for a position? Absolutely. But, we've lost people in the past because they wanted more steps and we couldn't give it to them just because we go through that very carefully. And so this is one of those cases where, yeah, I don't get too many people with that much experience, but if he didn't have the experience, we would not have given him the 18th step. So there's just in the short, we didn't give him extra steps just to get him. His qualifications and his experience over the years, were 1 for 1.
So which was it? Is it a negotiated contract? Because it sounds like it was negotiated based on what it took to get him here.
Yeah, it's a teaching position. So based on that, they're part of the CBA. So we look at their experience in their resume, and based on their experience, then we can say, okay, he gets this step for working, 5 years at this place. His experience has to be directly related to the position that he's applying for. And he's applying for a case manager with a lot of experience. So, but to answer your question, no, it's not common to have someone with that many years and that many experience applying for a job, but this is one of those situations.
So it was not negotiated.
No, it's.
Is this our only, we make an initial offer and it's take it or leave it, or was it negotiated?
No, I think it's pretty much, this is the experience you have. This is what we can give you and you take it or leave it.
Okay.
So it's
Thank
not
you.
really negotiating. We can only give them what the CBA allows us. We can't say, he can't say, well, you're only giving me step 18, but I want step 19 because I want this amount. It's like, sorry, that's not how it works. So not really negotiating. We just pick apart the resume and try to place them appropriately. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Chris.
And-
Anything else, Jessa?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
David, if I could, and I apologize.
Yes, please, Andy.
On the spreadsheet, his name, his first and last name are reversed. So it's actually Claire Abel.
Got it.
My
Thank you for the
apologies. My
correction.
apologies to Mr. Abel too. So
Hopefully we won't watch to the end of the meeting. Okay, we're under a motion from Priscilla Lambert to hire Richard Burbridge, Lori Greenleaf, is that correct? Kathleen Dowd and Claire Abel. Further discussion under the motion. All right, then, I'm going to seek a vote. Priscilla Lambert, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Brenda Farkas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Deb Wright, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thanks. Jason Benson,
Yes.
Jessa West Clark.
I am going to abstain.
Okay, I've got it. Thank you. Lynn Morgan,
Yes.
Jack Breyer.
Yes.
All right, Andy, you have hired 4 members of your professional staff. And
thank you
thank
very
you
much.
for your diligence in finding them.
Can I ask one question?
Well, I think we have a
Just-
question from Priscilla Lambert, and let's take it before we move on.
Does that fill the roster of everything that we need, or are we still looking, or?
Oh yeah, we're still looking. So we have 1 open position still at Westminster Center School. And how we've kind of worked out, we have a teacher at the middle school that's graciously transferring temporarily to when we're looking at the caseload. I know you know, like trying to balance out that caseload. But we're looking to fill that position, and then once we fill that position, transferring that teacher back to the middle school. And then we have about a half a dozen to 8 paraprofessional positions still open across the SU.
And you have analyzed as to whether you actually need these based on your caseloads and that
Yes,
information?
we are taking the approach that we were running short last year also, even as we returned back from hybrid, and we continued to reevaluate it, but we were at about a dozen. We've been able to move on a couple just here in the last week, but we'll probably open short. We'll reevaluate if we're able to make all the coverages that are still in the IEPs that students need for service.
And whether those are really needed or not. I mean, with our
And we
return
are-
to a different,
Correct.
as far as like, I had noted that it seemed like you had cut a lot of students that out of needing special ed services. And so your caseloads were really fairly small. So had you looked at that as far as whether you know, in comparison to whether your need for all these special educators was important? I know at the high school level with losing all those teachers, you definitely would need some, but did you compare, like you said, you could move one to Westminster? Are you really going to need that middle school one?
Are we going to need that one? I think that's something we need to continue to evaluate. Our biggest concern is we already have a number of referrals for us to consider, and the school year hasn't even started. And in speaking with principals, they are extremely concerned about a number of kids and are waiting for the school year to begin to refer them for special education evaluation. And so we actually anticipate that our numbers potentially are going to increase quite a bit as the school year begins. We're actually last year saw quite a few referrals around the winter break as we got in there, the holiday break. And so we actually anticipate that we're going to have quite a number, many of them after the first quarter, when as kids settle in, a lot of loss of learning. And so we look at that with ESSER, and we really try to take that into consideration and look at, are these kids, would they lose learning anyway? Did all kids lose learning? Or do we really have a student who has a learning deficit and in need of direct services?
Right, because whether it's really special ed or whether it's simply a result of the COVID situation, which
Correct.
our recovery program is addressing anyway. And so you probably want to be really careful about putting them in special ed versus, providing all the services for all our students that have mental health issues at this point.
Correct. And one of the things we implemented a few years ago is what we call our student services team. And it's an SU level team that includes our school psychologists, our speech pathologists, our occupational therapists, and then myself. And we meet with the parent and with the school. The school kind of brings a student as a case study and presents that student for their rationale with all of their data for why they feel they want to move forward with an evaluation. And we found that tool has been extremely successful, because if we are denying a parent, we're actually right there with the parent, having the explanation. The parent understands why we're denying or why we're going in a different direction.
Right, figuring out what else you can do.
And so
supporting
it's
the
actually been very, very helpful. So we don't get we're not getting bogged down in evaluations, which is typically what would happen. And so we're able to shift things over. So if it's just testing they're looking for on a student to have more information, we can do that. And we're streamlining things. I guess that's the word I'm trying to find. So we've been able to streamline that process. And I think we're doing students a better service, because we're not just moving kids into special education just because they have a learning deficit, but we're actually targeting what is the direct instruction they need, as opposed to, do they have a learning disability? Yes, they might have a learning disability, which is the first gate. Do they have adverse effect? Yes or no. but do they really need direct instruction? And actually the state is changing the second gate and they are eliminating the lowest 15th percentile threshold. So we began a couple of years ago to say, we're going to target direct instruction. And does this student need direct special ed instruction? And so that's how we're able to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Priscilla, for the pressing questions. Cheryl.
And thank you. Just really following up on that a little bit, Andy, two-part question. The first is that you were talking about the shortage, the nationwide shortage around special education teachers. In this interview process, have you found people that were not a fit for us? So you're not simply hiring anyone who comes to the door. You're really being careful in all of that as well, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. I mean, we do screen people and we look at, and as we look through their resumes, if they're a good fit. I mean, I also get people who are applying and they don't they might have a bachelor's degree, which now the state with the standards board has even opened up that we can just hire these people. And we're not just hiring warm bodies. We're looking for people who are qualified educators who are going to come in and be able to support kids, to the needs that they have. And, we might have an educator coming in, a case manager, that maybe they have been working with one population and we're trying to steer them in another direct population, but they have that experience and that's what we're looking for. But if someone isn't of quality, I would rather leave a position open and try and find a way to cover that as opposed to just bringing somebody in.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And the second part of my question is really tied into some things Priscilla said, and you've alluded to, that you're anticipating, you and your whole team and the principals and faculty here and others are really looking at the possibility that we're going to have a greater number of children who need some kind of evaluation. It might not be special education, as Priscilla said, but we have a great many unanticipated, perhaps, social and emotional needs and behavioral needs. So just make a few comments about how you're trying to prepare for that in this unusual time.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things we did, and it's why we looked at our TIDES classroom and made a shift to call it and change the programming to what I need. So the idea is to target the behavior when the kiddo needs that targeted intervention and not have the student in a self-contained classroom. And so what we've also done is open that up for students, regular ed students, who also are distributing or exhibiting some of those similar behaviors and need some of that support. Because if we can support a student before they get into special education, then we're able to, essentially keep them out of special education. And a lot of times, special education becomes almost a life sentence, and we try to really work to get kids out. But if a student is exhibiting those behaviors and we can support them and minimize those behaviors, then they don't grow to the point that they really do need that direct instruction in behavior. So we're really looking to target in the social emotional piece. It's also where we've gotten involved with the schools with their educational support plans and teams and really working at that level, which is a regular ed function. But student services is getting involved and helping to coordinate that so that what happens at Westminster Center is also the same type of meeting and language that's being used at Central Elementary. So schools are all looking at kids the same way. So we're not looking at kids differently, if that makes sense. But then it's also, as I know we talked about it earlier, or the high school board meeting, as Act 173 comes on, that's really the meat of Act 173 is how are we supporting all kids at all different levels and when they need that support. And so we're kind of moving in that direction now so that we can make sure that we're prepared as that comes on board, that we are meeting the needs of kids.
Thank you, Andy. Anything else, Cheryl? Anyone else? Okay. In that case, I would like to move to It appears to be director's comments. Cheryl, you want to lead us off tonight? Oh, okay. Well, that was pretty good show right there. Thank you. Deb Wright?
Okay. One of the items we didn't bring up is we're talking about, what to do with children as they come back into school in all the schools. But I really think that we should have a discussion about what the policy is because about teachers being vaccinated or getting tested on a daily basis, because institutions of education like UVM and others have set these policies in place. As Chris has said, we can have a stronger policy than what is actually out there through the CDC. This is all to keep the children safe, and also it keeps the staff and educators safe as well. So I would like us to consider having that as a further meeting agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Jessa West Clark.
I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessa. Brenda Farkas.
I'm pretty much all set, but I want to thank Flora for the packet and to acknowledge that office as they're getting ready for the budget time and the work they do.
Jason Benson.
Yeah, I just think with these current times right now, we really need to lean on the side of caution, believe in the science that's out there. I've had a few interesting experiences lately, and just seeing what the medical community is taking serious and not taking serious. We shouldn't be playing doctors. We need to certainly adhere to the advice that is coming from the people that specialize in some of these matters. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Jack Breyer.
Yeah, hi. Speaking of doctor's recommendations, Dr. Keith Loud did provide a series of recommendations, and they were sent to our schools. And I don't know if everybody got them, but if they did, they ought to take a look, because Dr. Loud is not only the most senior pediatrician in the state of New Hampshire, he's also head of Children's Hospital at Dartmouth, and he's an advisor to the Biden administration, and he's our advisor. I would like everybody to take a look and listen to his recommendations. I think that you would find them instructive. One other point, I was hearing Olivia tonight, and I think we do want to have a response to her. I would tell her, as David did, we are not members of the VSBA, and this is a good example of why. We opposed the consolidation of this function to the VSBA and this board, because this state board, because we said they lacked the expertise that you could find at almost any school board in the state, and this is an example of why. I would just remind you as a rep of your union that the union supported this consolidation, and to some extent this is your breakfast. We will do whatever we can to help and raise our voices independently, but this has been there's been a pattern of behavior where the union has signed on to incredibly bad policy that would almost assuredly damage your members, and the union did nothing. And we need to get together and find some things we agree on so this doesn't keep happening.
Thank you, Jack. Lynn Morgan.
Nothing at this time.
Priscilla Lambert.
It's on. Keep in mind, we're all striving for students to recover in mental health areas, and we want them to be successful academically. Therefore, as we enter the school year and try to address everyone's concerns, I would encourage everyone to remember to also be kind and patient in dealings with others. and be kind to yourselves as well.
Thank you, Priscilla. The folks in the Zoom and the folks in the room want to say thank you, Team WNESU. Had a really rugged year and we're still in tough times, but I have every confidence that we're going to meet the challenge. So thanks. And I want to say special thanks to Flora for bailing me out with a correct agenda. Meant quite a lot to me, Flora, to be able to pick up those last couple of G's and H's. So thanks. Date of next meeting, September 8. I presume it will be at 6:30 here at the Union High School. I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session, inviting administration, any ex officio members who might be here tonight, and also Olivia Clark. Can I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Deb.
Yep.
Okay, I believe we're ready for the motion. Jack,
Yes.
thank you. Jessa,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
Jason Benson,
Yes.
Deb Wright,
Aye.
thank you. And Brenda Farkas.
Yes.
Okay, we're in.